Okay, so for this next lesson, we are going to get into animation inside of After Effects. So we're going to work through building keyframing through a composition and some more concepts related to that. So if you've watched the first lesson or the previous lesson, you saw we did some basics of keyframing. We're going to continue on that inside of here. One of the first things we're going to do, just to refresh this, is on a Mac, After Effects Preferences General. I believe it's under a PC under File Settings. You can do that, but we're going to go to After Effects Preferences General, or maybe Edit Settings, somewhere in here. You can look on a PC, After Effects Preferences General. And we're going to go to Default Spatial Interpolation to Linear. That's under the General Settings. We're going to make sure that's checked. That is the fourth thing down. Just do that. I'll explain what that means in a little bit. But for now, we're going to leave that on and have that there like so. That said, we're going to go here and go into Layer. And I'm going to make a new solid. Just for example purposes, I'm going to make a new solid. We're going to say Make a new solid and create this solid. I'll create a solid that is maybe 200 by 200 pixels. And I'll choose a color. Let's see, maybe magenta today. And so get a magenta solid that's 200 by 200. You know what? Maybe we'll make it 250 by 250. Why not? A little bit bigger. Probably change my mind later on. And so now we have this magenta solid here on the screen that is 250 by 250. Yeah, that felt a little bit big. If you ever want to change a solid, you can always go back to Layer, Solid Settings, and then reset it back to something smaller. Let's go to 200 by 200. So that always is there. It saves in this solid folder there, but if you ever want to just change a layer that you've created, you can always go to Layer, and whatever layer you've created or whatever layer you're selected on, you can change that. In this case, Command-Shift-Y is the shortcut. So we're going to go here, and I'm going to type in some exact points. So I'm going to hit P for position, and I'm going to type in the points of 300 by 500 and leave it right there. And I'm going to start to animate. So we'll take this back to the beginning here, and I'll animate position, stopwatch on, and I'll go to maybe 1 second. I'll zoom in a little bit so I can see my seconds. And I'll go to 1 second here. And I'm going to go to a number here of 600 by 200. So it's going to go up to that corner there. So again, Command R if you want to see the rulers. You can see where it's going to, roughly where this anchor point is. We'll go to 2 seconds here, and at 2 seconds, we're going to go to 900 by 500. And we're going to go to there. And then next, we're going to go to 3 seconds, and we're going to choose to go to, let's see, at 3 seconds, we're going to go to back to 600 by 800. And then we're going to go to there. And then at 4 seconds, we're going to go back and return back to 300 by 500. So we're going to return to 300 by 500, and we have this exact points. And this path that it's making, this red line path, and we can change the color of this, make it yellow if you want to. This yellow line path here is called the motion path. This is the path that the position animation takes. When you animate position, it makes these paths. And these points, I think we talked about this before, but these points here are the vertex points. And if I click on one of them, I click on the vertex points, and you see the vertex points becomes highlighted. I can also click on the keyframe here, and it highlights the vertex points. So this one is filled in. These ones are kind of hollow and empty. These little points along the path here are actually the frames that it takes. So these are 24 frames to get to here and 24 frames to get to here. So 24 dots if you were to bother to count these. You could make these dots. Now these vertex points, when you click on the magenta solid, you click on the position, these vertex points, as you click through them, you'll see that you can actually move these. You can actually grab these points and actually change the position of the path. Right now it's moving in this shape, kind of a diamond shape here. It's moving pretty much straightforward like that. But we can actually grab these points and actually click and drag and pull them and make, you know, weird, I don't know, other quadrilateral shapes and have it move that way. But right now what we have here is we have these points. And the reason why it's moving in these points is because we set up a point here at 300 by 500. And if we hit the K key, we can jump to the next keyframe, K key, jump to the next keyframe, and it moved to 600 by 200. So on the horizontal, on the x-axis, it moved from 300 to 600. And if you're doing the math, it moved 300 pixels. And if you're moving the vertical, the y-axis, it moved from 500 to 200. So it moved negative 300 pixels. So it moved from 3 to 6, 5 to 2, so it's moving basically there. And then the next one, it goes from 600 to 900, again, moving 300 pixels, and it went from 200 back down to 500. So that's the math. And kind of in its core, Adobe ends up being a visual math program. And basically you plot points and you decide what points are, and it just does the math for you. It interprets what the math is. And this is an idea called interpolation. This is a computer system using math to interpret things. something called interpolation. So it interpolates these points. Now, if we look at this shape, the motion path, this motion path across here, the motion path here is basically a diamond shape. I mean, we could just square in its side, basically. So if you were in kindergarten, you could say this was basically is moving in a diamond shape. And why is it moving in a diamond shape? Well, because we plotted points along this. We decided that we had these points along here. Now, if you were to discuss the math of how this works, is basically we plot points on a graph. Now, somewhere in here, Adobe is doing some kind of mathematical equation. And the way that it is a mathematical equation, it makes these lines from here to here and makes lines that go from there to there. And so if you remember, high school geometry class, you might remember equations like, I don't know, for example, hypothetically, x plus y equals 6. And so under here, you'd have a range of variables. X plus y could be 4 and 1, and could be 4 and 2, and then 1 and 5, and then 3 and 3, and then 2 and 4, and 5 and 1, and all these. And this would equal a line. So there'd be a range of variables in here that could equal, these numbers. So you'd have 6 and 0. You'd have 5. You'd have 5 and 1, and you'd have 4 and 2, and so on and so forth. You'd have these numbers that would equal these different numeric variables. And when you plot these on a piece of graph paper, this would equal, if you had a good old Cartesian plane here, this would equal, your y-axis and your x-axis. These points would end up equaling a line. If you plotted all these points along a thing, you'd make some kind of a line there. So you'd have basically, some kind of a line that would equal some value, whatever it may be, going from here to here. And this would be your line. And so that would be 6 and 0, and 5 and 1, and 4 and 2, and 3. And this is how the math would work. So it's basically going back to this. Now, this kind of equation over here, this kind of mathematical equation, was talking about an idea called linear algebra. And linear algebra was basically, making lines across there, using equations like this and making lines. So the next thing we're going to get into here, which is a little bit more advanced, is why is this making straight lines and instead not making curves? How come we're not making round edges? Why is this a diamond shape and not a circle? Why is it not rounding around this and going around these points? Well, because by default right now, we have this using linear algebra to make these points. If we want to get more complicated, we have to get to quadratic equations, bicubic equations, logarithms. Oh man, trigonometric functions. Remember to make curves to make interesting shapes like, I don't know, like an S curve or something. If we wanted this to move into an S curve like this, we'd have to get into tangents and sine and cosine and all those other kind of concepts. This is moving in straight line shapes, and so it's not doing the thing we want it to do. If we wanted to get some kind of a strange curve out of this, we'd have to make something there. Well, thankfully we don't. And we don't because of a wonderful man named Pierre Bezier. And Pierre Bezier was basically a computer programmer, a graphics computer programmer from the 1980s, who decided that he had a better way of making curves inside of graphics programs. And he created something called Bezier Curves. And so Pierre Bezier, he was French, came out with this idea called Bezier Curves. Now, these points right here, these are called vertex points on the screen, and these vertex points are basically what's considered a linear vertex point. They're considered linear vertex points. Well, we want to change them and make them Bezier vertex points, and the easiest way I found to do that is through a function here, which is where you hit Command and Option or Control and Alt on a PC, and you change your cursor to a convert vertex cursor. Now, it's somewhere else in here. There's a convert vertex down here, convert vertex tool as well. But if you're here, just on the vertex, the position tool here, the selection tool, you can just Command Option click and then convert this vertex into a thing. So we're going to hover over this, hold down Command and Option, again, Control Alt on a PC, and we're going to click this, and it's going to add these little satellites around here. And you see these little satellites that exist around the vertex. And these are what are called Bezier handles. So these Bezier handles allow us to grab this and pull these lines of tangency, these Bezier handles. Now these handles by default as they're designed by default, these handles are designed with kind of two principles. Bezier designed with two basic principles. The amplitude, which means how far you pull away from the vertex. If you put it really close to the vertex, you make straight lines. If you pull it really far away from the vertex, you make, curves, bigger amplitude curves. And then the other variable is the angle. So you pull the curve and you pull the amplitude and the angle, and the amplitude and the angle equal the curve that you make. And everything is based on the angle and the amplitude. Now you can make curves. So now if we want to make this a circular shape, we may go here and pull this out, other side out to here. Each of these sides has their own different amplitude. They work together kind of synchronously in terms of angle, but they have their own different amplitude here. So we're going to go this one. Now this one's still a linear vertex point. So we're going to hit Command Option and convert this to a Bezier and pull this like this. And then this one, Command Option, Control Alt, boom, and pull this like this. And now we have kind of a round-ish shape, kind of roughly a round shape. Now, this one's over here. These two consist of 2 points. There's actually 2 points next to each other. The first point, the beginning of the animation and the end animation. So we're going to have to do both of them individually. It's not one, group of handles. It's 2 different handles. So now we have a round shape. So now this is moving. That's not bad. That's pretty round. I mean, it's not perfect. Not a perfect circle, but, kind of rounded. Now it's moving in a round base shape. So this is nice. We can make this move in a roundish shape. Basically like this. Now, if we hit these guys and we go back to this, we can go back to Command Option and click these, convert these vertex back to linear, linear, linear. I'm holding down Command Option, linear, linear, linear. Control Alt. Now we're back to a diamond shape. So we've lost that. Again, if we do this again, now Command Option again, it's going to go start over again. So we could undo and do it back to our circular shape. There we go. Now we're back to our circular shape. I just hit undo a bunch of times, good old edit undo, Command Z. And so now we have this like there. Now the weird thing is we can make this circular shape, but it's really harder to make shapes that have unique shapes, like for example, a heart. Let's say a heart. Because a heart, I could make a heart shape. I could pull this side up, but when I pull this side up, it pulls the other side down. And when I pull this side up, it pulls this side down. Pull this side up, it pulls that side down, and vice versa. And this is important because this is nice. It allows us to make these nice kind of roller coaster shapes, kind of these nice smooth, easy roller coaster shapes. It's nothing kind of hits against each other. But we want this to hit against each other because we want to bring up this one and then also simultaneously bring up this one. And we want to kind of break the connection between this. Now, right now, these Bezier modes, the mode of the Bezier vertex points, are what are considered asymmetrical, which means they have their own amplitude, but they have a codependent angle. So we want them to be completely independent, not asymmetrical, but completely independent. So the way we do that is tricky. One of the things I love about After Effects is that you can do a lot of things with it, and there's all these different things you can do inside of After Effects. The problem is that it sometimes gets really tricky. It's like flying a 747. It's not necessarily, there's a lot more buttons and a lot more things you can do, but it's going to be a lot harder to do because there's a lot more buttons and a lot more things you can do. It's like having a luxury car. You have all these buttons on a luxury car that can do all these great things, but you got to know what all the buttons do. Did you ever drive a luxury car? It has all these buttons. I don't even know what it does. I drive a cheap car. Anyway, so the point being is that this gets a little bit tricky. And the tricky thing is this. The way to break the handles, the way to separate the handles so that this one moves independent of this one, the separate independent angles, is I'm going to click on this. And you click on it first. And then once you're clicked on it, you hold the Alt key or the Option key and you drag. And then this breaks the handle. The tricky thing is that you let go of the mouse first. And I used to have struggle with this all the time because I would let go of the Alt key first and would jump back to being there. No, hold in the Alt key, let go of the mouse first. And now I'm going to let go of everything. Hands are up off the screen. And then nothing's touching nothing. And now it's completely independent. Now, when I go back to use the mouse, I don't have to hit the Option key or the Alt key ever again. I can just grab this and pull, and then I have this completely independent, and these are all independent. Now this one's still, this one here is still asymmetrical. It's still moving on its own. It's still moving like there. I could take this one and click here and pull this one kind of like this and have this here. Pull this one in a little bit. These ones are kind of independent because they're not really in the same keyframe. But here, this looks like a weird kind of, I guess like a weird apple or something. I could grab this again, hold down Shift, grab this, curve this in, and then have this curve in like this, and then have this curve in like this. And then I could get you know, roughly a heart shape, kind of, sort of, kind of a heart shape. And so now this is moving in an independent heart shape based on like this. And this is how Bezier handles work. So if you're familiar with Illustrator, you're familiar with Photoshop, a lot of programs use Bezier handles. Even Avid and Final Cut Pro and all these other programs, 3D modeling programs use Bezier handles. It's a common way to make curves. Pierre Bezier kind of invented this concept, this technology of how to make curves, and it was kind of groundbreaking. So we have this curve technology that's doing all this great stuff. And so again, and if we hit Command Option, we can make these back to linear. But now we can make these shapes. Here, we'll even change the color of this to pink. There we go. Oh, maybe red for heart. There we go. There we go. Very romantic. And so now we're just having this move in a heart shape like so. And so we have this right out there like there. So let's try something different. Let's kill these keyframes. So I'm gonna hit the stopwatch, which is gonna get rid of all the keyframes, and we're gonna start over from scratch. I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller. I'm gonna hit S for scale and move this down to about 70%, a little bit smaller. And I'm gonna move this like this. So we're gonna make some linear points here. And I wanna show you an idea here. I'm gonna take this, we're gonna make the outline here yellow. And so I'm gonna hit P for position, and I'm gonna move from here. I'll go in 1 second intervals. Maybe I'll go in half-second intervals. Yeah, roughly about half-second intervals. We'll go to here, I'll go to here. Let's see here. I'll go to here. I'll go to here. You can move that, and maybe move that a little bit closer. Again, I can just click on those vertex points and move them. I'll go to here. We'll go to here. See if I get this right. Here, we'll go to there. Yeah, we'll go to here, and then I'm going to go up to here, and I'm going to go to here, then I'll go to here. I think this should be good. We'll see. Not I may need another point, but we'll see. We'll try this. You should be better at this. Anyway, so now we're going to have this move like this. It's going to go like this, and go here, and go there, and then boom, 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 boom. Really exciting, really amazing. Whew. Mind-blowing, right? I mean, we made this. Looks like one of those, you know, EKG machines or something. Random pattern. But here's the thing we can do. Now look, we can take this, we can go to Command Option this, we can click this out. We can pull this like there. Oh, what's he doing, Chad? Oh, pull this like there, pull this to here, maybe like this. Take this one, go like this, sweep these over like this, kind of reverse them here, have them work against each other. Then we're gonna go like, take this, and then we're gonna go here and just say, let's go and pull this like this. Cool, we'll curve this out like there. We'll take this shape here like so. We'll pull this one up a little bit so it curves out this way. We'll reverse these guys. We'll kind of swap these like this. Here we go. We'll pull this one down here like there. Awesome. We'll take this one and I'm going to click, Option click. So I'm using the curves. Oh, look at this. Command Option click this. Curve this one. I'm holding an Option. Curve this here. Click this like there. Kind of rotate it like this. Or take this one, pull this like this. Curve this out like this. And then just take this one, curve this one, alternate it, boom. Maybe even a little extra little. There, and I wrote my name in cursive. Look at that, I wrote my name in cursive. Amazing. I wrote my name in cursive. Look at that, you didn't even see that. Man, whoo, look at that, all my name in cursive. Amazing. Oh, it's fantastic. Look at that, look how cool. Look how cool. Groundbreaking. There, you didn't even picture it. Now, I want to talk about this as an idea. I also wanted to show off how cool I could write my name in cursive. Future generations may not be able to do this, you know, may not have this technology, but still write my name in cursive. So I want you to see how this looks. I'm actually going to bring in an image here, and it may not be the same name in cursive, but we'll go to here. I grabbed an image off the desktop of my name because I'm so vain that I just wrote my name in cursive, and I have my name in cursive here. This is a little bit fancier of a name in cursive, but you get the idea. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. We're going to hold this, shift click, and write this there. Make this take up the whole screen. Cool. So I have my name in cursive here. So I want you to see how this works. So we'll start over here just as an idea. And I'm gonna trace this out of how they did this. And so I'm gonna kill all these points. I know, goodbye all these points. We'll make this here, put this here, and we're gonna put this dot right here. And actually we're gonna make this semi-transparent so you can see behind it. I'll hit T for opacity, go down to 50%, and then boom, have this be a little bit transparent. So think of how they did this. I could come from here on position. So we're going to do position. That's the only way to get the motion graph is hit position. We're going to position, go from here, go to halfway down, and I'm going to go to, and I could do this. I could go to like here, and then I can go another second, and I can go to here. And I can go another second, and I can go, or half second, whatever, and I can go to here, and I can keep doing this, and I can take all the time to do this. And that's already, I have 5 points there. And that's kind of crazy. I don't need to do that because I can let the curves do their job. And if you want to get into this, you're going to have to embrace the Bezier curves. So I think to myself, I'm going to loop down here and then loop back up. So I'm going to come 1, 2, just like that. Now, if you see, just like that, and I'm going to lower the opacity on chat as well so you can really see this here. So I'm just going from here to here. Now, with this, what I can do here is I can go Command-Option this and curve this like this, and then make it up. Oops. Sorry, let me pull that a little bit wider. Pull that like there, and curve it like that. And let the curves do their job. You know, let the curves work their magic and do their job, and really pull this here. Again, other keyframe, pull this one out to here, and really have the curves really work their magic. And that's where we get the curve. And so for the next point, I don't need to make a point here, 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 here. I just need to make a point down here, or maybe even just to here. I could probably come to here, watch this, probably come to roughly about here. And again, pull this out. Other part of this, Command-Option, click there, get the curve, and curve this out, and I've got the curve. And I make nicer, smooth curves. It's a nice, smoother roller coaster. We're just making 2 points, beginning and end of the bend. And you see just this handle pulling out this way, plus this handle pulling out this way. I sometimes picture this like pulling a piece of metal, like if I was to bend a rod or something, my hands would grab each end of it and kind of bend it, and how much pressure I put by how far I pull on each end would bend it. And again, I can go here to the H and come up to here and go to there and then to there. And can I make a loop like that? Yeah, Command-Option, boom, and curve this and make some kind of a shaped loop that pulls out like there. And then going to this whole loop of the H, I just need to go over to here. I don't even need to make the top point of this. I just go to here and go Command-Option, boom. Then I can do a click, Option, click, here, and on the other end, Command-Option, boom, click this and get kind of this shape of this curve, sort of. Maybe I want to move this over and get kind of this action. There we go. Again, things you can do, tricks you can do. And so that's how I trace this out, and you kind of practice there. So again, I don't have to make a point up through this entire H. I just make a point at each place and then continue it on. But as you make motion paths, and as we play with motion paths, but as we play with other things, we may want to include some ideas of throwing in some curves and having some curves there. So even if we're doing something like, we're going to go into here and we're going to say, let's go in and grab a basketball or some kind of a ball here. Animation, we'll grab a volleyball here. We'll grab a volleyball, maybe even a tennis ball. No, let's do a tennis ball. There's tennis ball here, and we're going to take this tennis ball. I'll get rid of these for a second. Sorry, guys. Go away. We'll bring this tennis ball. This is gigantic here. We'll scale this down to maybe like 25%. Boom. Little tennis ball. And we'll take this tennis ball, and maybe instead of, you know, this ball shooting straight down like this from here to here and bouncing up, we want this tennis ball to curve as it bounces. Again, Command-Option, you can simply do it all at once, click and drag there. And then this one, Command-Option, pull this one here and have this have a bouncy-esque motion. So now it's going barrel. There we go. That's more playful. It's more cartoony, at least. It's an idea, just an idea. Something we can play with, something we can take advantage of to throw in there. So learn this, but if beyond learning this, you're going to want to learn Bezier Handles. There are lots of tools to teach you Bezier Handles. If you go on the internet right now, there's actually a game you can play. If you look up Bezier game, you can find this. Somebody made this Bezier game. It's how to draw Bezier Handles based on shapes. And you skip the tutorial stages, and you can draw this. So you can start here, and how many points you make to draw this, to go here, and you pull right here, you draw this out, you pull this way, you go to here, and you can draw your own shapes and play this game. I don't know how many stages are in this game, but sometimes you gotta fix these shapes. Oops, not what I meant to do. Let's undo, let's make that a little bit straighter. You can hit Command Z and undo. Curve this out, and then go to here, and to here, and to here, and they give you a number of nodes. These are vertex points, they call these nodes. I don't know, I saw this game online. Oops. Let's curve this out a little bit more. Out to there, maybe. You want to hold on the Option key and pull this to there. So you get a little bit straighter shape. One. Oh, I could probably make this with less. I probably want to pull this. Hold on. Let's undo and let's pull this here. Nope. I want to do Option click and pull this to there. And then continue on. I might pull this wider. Hold on. Undo. One more time. It's a hard game. It's a hard game, you know, but you can play. See, too big. Too big. Last one. Maybe to about there. We're a little short. Yeah, we're a little short. Undo. Yeah? Oh, cool. I did it with 15 nodes. I guess you can do it with less. If you really got some nice curves there, you could use less points. Then you go next stage and you can make an airplane. I don't know, just a game. It's a game you can play. But it's things you want to learn how to get good with, because you're going to use them for all kinds of things. There's all kinds of things in After Effects that use these ideas of Bezier handles. They mostly work in the same principles. Just as a quick aside, so what we're doing here is when we're making this magenta solid, for example, we said with this magenta solid, we're going to isolate points here. And we do this again. We'll make the point to 300 by 500. We're going to go here to the next unit of measure, which was 600 by 200. And we're moving in linear. We're using linear algebra, basically. We're using linear math to make these points at these various places. And this linear mode, this is how it's moving along the motion path. This is how it's moving here along this path to make this diamond shape. So this is how it was making the diamond shape. The tricky thing here is that the answer to the question from before is After Effects Preferences General. Default spatial interpolation to linear. So the question is how does After Effects interpret or interpolate how it moves across space? And what it's saying is the default spatial interpolation is to linear. And I think that should be checked all the time. I think that should be the number one, have that be checked that way. Have that be functioning that way. The default spatial interpolation should always, 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 always be linear. And I'll show you if that's not checked. Next time you make a solid or you make something that animates, let's say this tennis ball again, we'll scale this down smaller, 25% here. When this moves and you move position, so how it interprets how it moves across space, what's called the spatial interpolation. We'll go from here to here to here. It automatically starts making curves for me. And that's weird. That's weird. I don't want that by default. It's just, for me, I'd rather explain, especially as a trainer, I'd rather explain that, no, this should go in straight lines. I don't want to auto-generate curves, because then students are asking questions like, why is it making these weird curvy shapes? I want this. I want this and this and this and this. You know, if I were gonna give you a connect the dots, and the dots were like on various places on the screen, they were here and here and here and here and here, you'd probably, you know, run a line from here to here. You wouldn't just run a curved line that looked like, you know, no one would expect you to be like, oh, make it look like this, because that was how we were supposed to do it. No, nobody interprets that way. And so that just feels very weird to interpret that way. Oh yeah, no, we can make it look like this. Sure, we can curve this way. That's what we wanted. We wanted some kind of weird elephant looking shape or something. No, we didn't ask for that. We just asked for straight points. So we're saying the default spatial interpolation, how it interprets in space by default, is straight lines. And that's what we're asking. One last little detail. in talking about spatial interpolation and playing with Bezier handles. Again, it's a thing you should practice. It's a thing you should get better at. It's a thing that I should get better at. One of the things you'll notice here in one of the settings is that if you go and you play and you have this animated to go from here, and again, still not doing linear spatial interpolation, but that's a thing. For every new version of Add you get into, you're going to have to reset that. That is the default is to make curves. So every time you get a new version of FX, go into your preferences or migrate your preferences. That would work as well. What you'll notice though is another thing. As I jump forward, you'll notice that some of this motion path starts to go away. And so as it proceeds forward, it kind of starts deleting some of the motion path. So if you ever see your motion path deleting, that's because Adobe After Effects is trying to be nice to you, and by being nice to you, they're trying to remove some of that spaghetti that ends up on your screen that's here. So the spaghetti was here, but then it started writing more spaghetti and then deleting the other spaghetti. But if you ever want to see all the motion path wiring on your screen and not see any of that gotten rid of, go to Preferences, Display, Show All Keyframes, and that's in these Show All Keyframe settings. It's a setting, and now everything's there. And so it'll show all this stuff, and nothing will ever dissipate as it goes. If you don't want that, After Effects Preferences, Display, I think it's show no more than 15 seconds or show no more than 5 keyframes or whatever choice you want. And that would be, it would start to dissipate over time. So that dissipates by keyframes, or you could dissipate by Display, Preferences, Display, show no more than 5 seconds of keyframes, and then eventually it will kind of erase itself as it goes. That's just a feature. So if you're trying to write your name or anything, you see that dissipating. That's just in the settings. There's lots of settings for lots of reasons that do lots of cool things. We'll look at a whole bunch of them as we go. Okay, so for the next part of this, we are going to talk about the other type of interpolation. We talked about spatial interpolation. Now let's talk about temporal interpolation. So let's work with the magenta solid again. Or let's make another solid. Why not? Let's choose another color solid. Command Y, we'll make another solid. We'll make this again 200 by 200. We'll choose cyan maybe. Let's do cyan. Good color, cyan. Cool. So we have cyan solid here, and I'm going to move this cyan solid to P for position. And I'm going to put this at 300 by 500. Now, we're going to leave this 300 by 500. Stopwatch is on. And I'm going to move to 2 seconds, and I'm going to go to 1300 by 500. And sorry, let me actually go back to, before I do this math, let's actually switch back to default spatial interpolation to linear. As before, general, default spatial interpolation linear. I really do prefer that. Now we're going to start to animate. And I'm going to move to 1300 by 500. I caught my Bezier handle showing up, and I said something's wrong. Let's see. Give this a linear. Excellent. And so now it's moving here from 300 by 500 to 1300 by 500 over 2 seconds. So it's moving from 300 to 1300 over 2 seconds. And this motion that we have here, moving from 300 to 1300, is moving over 2 seconds. And this is the rate of speed. And the rate of speed is determined by basically dividing the number of pixels, in this case, number of pixels, by the time. And so we can say that this is a rate of speed of 500 pixels per second. That would be the rate of speed. And so we're saying 1,000 pixels over 2 seconds would be 500 pixels per second. It moves at that speed. If we move this to 5 seconds, move this keyframe to 5 seconds, we could say the rate of speed now is 200 pixels per second, because it would still be 3 to 1300, which would be 1,000 pixels, divided by 5, which would be 200 pixels per second. And if we move this to 10 seconds, and I'm going to go here again and go to After Effects, Preferences, Display, and say Show All Keyframes. I just see my motion path when I'm doing this. Now it's moving at a rate of 100 pixels per second, which is slowly. So the distance between keyframes is always speed. Speed is always determined by the rate of speed between keyframes. So again, 1 second, much faster. Whoops, going to move much faster here and do this much faster, boom, like so. But 2 seconds is going to go to rate of speed of 500 pixels per second. Now, this is doing this at a linear speed. So in terms of speed, it's going from 300 to 1300, and it's going at a regular rate of speed. So it's going normally at 1000 pixels over 2 seconds. Divide that by 2, it's 500 pixels per second at a perfect speed there. But if we change this and we say, hey, we want this to include a little bit of acceleration and deceleration. We want to have a natural speed up and slow down. This speed looks very, I don't know, mechanical or robotic. It looks very much like early, you know, late 80s video game movement. It has very Atari 2600 kind of movement, or even Nintendo Entertainment System moved, you know. Pretty boring, pretty not realistic, pretty not natural or organic in any stretch of the means. So let's try to make this a little bit more lifelike, a little bit more real. So we can use a function called easy ease. Now you can get this by the animation menu, animation, keyframe assistant, easy ease. But the first thing we want to do is we want to select the keyframes we want to apply the easy ease to. So we're going to highlight both the keyframes. Now we can do this by clicking on one and then shift clicking on the other one. We can do this by going to the bottom and dragging a lasso or a selection around both of them and grabbing them. But I personally like this technique of going to position and click on the word position. So if you actually click on the name position, you highlight all the keyframes on that layer. And so highlighting all the keyframes of the layer, we can go to animation, keyframe assistant, easy ease. The shortcut is the F9 key. So if you have function keys enabled on your controls, you can see this acceleration, deceleration. You're going to see that this is going to accelerate and decelerate as it moves. So it slows and speeds up and slows down. I'm just going to do this over a shorter span. Speeds up, slows down, speeds up, slows down. If you can't really appreciate that, I'll even show you. We'll go to here with this magenta solid. I'll put this one at 300 by 800. So put it down here. And then we'll say animate position. We'll go to this next, let's say 1300 by 800. So this is going to do the same motion path. The top one, the cyan one, is going to do easy ease. So it adds a little bit of easing into the keyframes and easing out. You see the bottom one is moving at a constant rate of speed. This top one is speeding up and slowing down. So when in doubt, you can always add some ease into your motion. You know, you can have your motion path, apply some ease to this, and have this speed up and slow down as it needs to, which is a nice little functional thing you can do. So if you're doing some kind of a graphic or title or something coming over, you could apply some ease into this like so. So for example, if we had some kind of a banner or something, let's see. We just have we'll take this banner here. And this banner, this is football. Not really, it's O's there. We could say, hey, this banner is going to be on screen here, you know, and then in the beginning of this, it's going to be off screen, like over here, and it moves at a constant rate of speed. Cool, exciting. We can just click on position, hit the F9 key, and then boom. Our actual keyframes turned to little hourglasses, which I think is adorable. And so now we have this ease here, so it kind of speeds up and slows down. Looks a little different. You see a little bit of different change. We make this slower, just again, move the keyframes further apart from each other. Just slows in there. It's very mild. It's very mild. It's very subtle, very gradual. Very simple speed up and slow down between the keyframes. But it works. It works like a charm. So let's go a step further and let's try something different here. We're going to look at this tennis ball again. And I'm going to bounce this tennis ball off the ground. We're going to scale this down to S for scale, 25%. And maybe just 50%. And we're going to have this basketball up here. And this basketball is going to bounce down. Maybe over a half second. It's going to bounce and hit the bottom. Oh, sorry. I'm animating scale. Look at that. I'm being silly. Let's unremove that keyframe. Let's go to position. P for position. Let's go to position here. Let's go here and go to there. And then go up to 1 second and go up to there. And we have this animating this. And this animation is kind of boring. Let's be honest. It's kind of moving in and kind of going in there like so. It's okay. It's there. But it looks kind of, I don't know, basic and generic. We can speed this up and slow this down. I'll show you how to slow down the entire animation or speed up the entire animation. If you click on a keyframe, you can move a keyframe. And if you're selected on a bunch of keyframes, hit position, now you're highlighting all the keyframes. You can move all the keyframes But there's a trick. If you hold on the Option key and click on the last keyframe, you can pull and expand the animation. So this would expand the animation to look like this. Or we can click, Option, drag, and pull that quicker to the quicker animation. But we want this to have more kind of a bounce. We want this to have more kind of a bounce kind of motion. So let's go here. We'll select all the keyframes here, and we'll hit the F9 key to apply some easy ease. That should fix everything, right? Except it doesn't. It really doesn't. It looks like this, which looks awful, right? That's terrible. That's a horrible bounce. It like slows down as it gets to the other point and doesn't work. So now what we got to do is we got to figure out how something actually bounces. And when something bounces, if I remember physics correctly, it'll bounce straight down at a constant rate of speed, but on the bounce back up, it'll start to slow down. It'll slow down a little bit as it bounces back up. So as this bounces back up, we're going to have this go a little bit slower. Now, if you want to apply easy ease, you can apply easy ease to, say, this keyframe. You can click on this one, hit F9, and apply easy ease, and that might do what you want to do. Yeah, it's kind of, sort of what it's supposed to be. And there's different variations of easy ease you could do. But I want to get more control. I want to get real control. And what we want to control here is we want to control an idea known as what's called the temporal interpolation. Let me write that out. Temporal interpolation. Now, before we played with spatial interpolation, that was our first kind of interpolation. Now we're going to play with temporal interpolation. And temporal interpolation is how it moves from keyframe to keyframe within time. How does it speed up and slow down within amount of time between each keyframe? And therefore, we're going to get into this thing called the graph editor. And this graph editor right here opens up. And if we're clicked on position right here, we go to the graph editor and it shows this. Now, here's the truth. There's two ways to look in the graph editor. I'll zoom in a little bit here so we can see this a little bit more. Little zoom tool. I'm going to zoom in here and see this. This is called the value graph. Now, the value graph is sometimes helpful. In certain circumstances, it's useful. For something like this, I really don't like the value graph. So I'm going to go here and switch to something called the speed graph. So I just right click on in this window and choose edit speed graph instead. I prefer that as an option. I think it's here too, edit speed graph. And I'm going to choose a speed graph. I don't like these red and green Christmas lights. So if you see these little lines here, let's go to speed graph. And then we're going to speed graph. So let's take a look at speed graph and how speed graph works. So what it's saying here is if you hover over this, it's saying it's moving at a rate of 1804.6 pixels per second. It did the math. So how it got from here to here, it moved at a rate of 1800 pixels per second. It's round. Up on the return, it's coming up at a rate of 1500 pixels per second. So let's play with this. If you notice here, if I go back and out of the speed graph and I hit easy ease, F9, or if I right click and choose Keyframe Assistant Easy Ease, F9, you'll see that when I go into the graph editor, it looks like this. Oh, so let's take a look at what it's doing. What is it doing? It starts going at 0% speed. Then it speeds up faster than 1800, up to about 2700, and then slows down to 0. And then starts up again from 0, goes up to about 2000, faster than 1500, 2200, 2250, and then slows down again. And so it makes this kind of motion. Speed up, slow down, speed up, slow down. And it's moving that way, kind of with the speed up, slow down idea like so. And I that's not what I want. So let's undo that. And let's look at it here. Okay, so here with the position, I have the position here. I wanted to, as it goes closer towards the ground, I want it to speed up a little bit. So I'm going to have it go a little bit slower at first. And then here on this end, I'm going to go faster, a little bit faster. So now it's going to accelerate as it goes here. And look, these little handles, oh look, little Bezier handles. I can pull this and curve this like this. I can make these curves. So the relationship between these two handles, I can kind of decide how I want this curve. So now it's going to go at a relatively straight speed, but it's going to increase, build up speed as it goes. And so here, going downwards, it's going to build up a little bit of speed. It goes a little bit faster. Well, let's make this really cartoony. Let's exaggerate this. So let's drag this way up here. We'll kind of pull this here. We'll kind of pull this like there. And now it's going to do a really drastic speed up. You'll actually even see the little dots here on the screen that show the change in speed here. Much faster as it goes down. But then as it comes back, so it speeds up a lot here. Even do this more. Just really crank this up. It's really going fast here. Boom. But then as it comes back up, it's going to go fast. And then as it gets close to the bottom, it's going to slow down. So again, here's going to be a drastic speed up, a drastic slow down. It's going to look like this. Boom. Okay, that's really cartoony. That's like Warner Brothers or Bugs Bunny. Boom, that's a really cartoony bounce. But we have something more interesting in terms of how the bounce is. We're playing with the temporal interpolation. And again, this is same keyframes. Same keyframes we had when we were linear, but now we're changing how this thing bounces, right? So we have a more robust kind of bounce there. Again, maybe we want this to be a little bit more subtle. We kind of control this here, bring this down, have this be just a little bit of bounciness. You see a little bit of more gradual, gentle bounce into this. Boom. Or we can make this really exaggerated, really cartoony, super bounce. Now it's going to really bounce. You can see it barely moving at first, and it's going to go boom. Yeah, it's like, you know, you get this really, you know, like Wile E. Coyote falling off the cliff kind of bounce. Anyway, this is what's called temporal interpolation. Now, this graph allows us to do a lot of things with motion. Allows us to speed up and slow down motion between keyframes to really adjust what's called a temporal interpolation. We'll give a couple more examples of this. We'll go back to this football banner, for example. And I'll bring in this football banner. We'll close this for a second. And I'm going to go here. And I saw somebody do this one time, and I really like it as an idea. So position. And we're going to have this off screen. So it's going to be off screen, just barely off screen. Just like this. Just, I mean, barely off screen here. And so now it's coming in, again, coming in linear. Very boring, very conveyor belt, boom. I mean, it works. It's sort of cool. So let's go here. Let's click on the word position, highlight both the keyframes, hit F9, and easy ease this. So now we have a little bit of animation. We have a little bit of temporal interpolation. There we go. It has a little bit of a more stylistic feel to it, you know, something. Has something. But man, if we go into speed graph and we grab these points and we kind of tweak this point all the way here, and then tweak this point all the way here, we get this weird kind of spike. I love this spike. I saw somebody do this and I was like, oh man, I've seen this before. This looks like every, I don't know, like cool car commercial I've ever seen. It has this idea, and the idea I think about is like the student showing up to class and they show up late. And so they start sneaking in a little bit, very slowly, and they see the teacher's not looking, and so they rush really fast. And then they go to their seat, but they want to slow down really slowly so they don't run into their seat. And it's kind of this student sneaking late for class that has this whipping effect. Man, that's cool. Just kind of comes in, boom. Again, doing the same motion that it was doing before, going from wherever it was off screen to being on screen. The same thing as the linear keyframes, but this is so much cooler. A little sound effect would make this even better. It's a thing we can do. It's definitely a trick. Definitely a trick we can take advantage of. Boom. They're like so. So you can get kind of these ideas, these tricks. We can do other examples here. I'll show you something else here. If we go here to this, let's see, this wheel, and this wheel here. This wheel on the screen. This wheel's kind of here. I'm going to put the anchor point, hit the Y key and put the anchor point right in the center of this wheel. Just make sure it's perfectly right here in the center of the wheel. And we have this wheel here. Let's say this wheel rotates, right? So we have this wheel. We'll scale this down a little bit, maybe make it like 80% here so we can really see the wheel. And so now this wheel is gonna rotate. So we're gonna hit rotation, R for rotation. We're gonna hit the stopwatch to animate rotation, and we're gonna go to 1 second. We're gonna 1 full rotation over 1 second. So this rotates at a standard rate. There it goes, rotates. What we can do though is we can say, let's have this, again, go into the graph editor here. Let's have this rotate slower and then build up speed as it goes. Now it rotates slowly, but starts to crank up. Maybe it's even going from not moving at all and then really cranking up speed. So it builds up speed kind of thing. So we can have this be even more drastic than this. We can have it really build up speed. Super slow and then builds up. So again, if you wanted something really, really moving, you know, you could do some kind of drastic motion. We can even make this longer and say, let's make these keyframes longer. But then let's say over 3 seconds, move to 3 seconds, it's going to rotate 3 times. Now it's going to start really slow, not moving at all, and then build up and build up and build up, and then go faster. And so now it goes from a really slow speed to its regular speed. And again, really slow, build up speed, and then move. things you can do, things you can control. And so making things move like this might be a thing you want to do. Now we could even do one further. We could say, if you went into the value graph here, in the value graph, we could take the value graph. We could actually go with the value graph under this situation, edit value graph, and we could pull this into the negative. The trick about pulling negative is now it will actually roll backwards before it rolls forward. So now it's going to go, it's actually going to rewind for a little bit. We're going to pull this down like this. And so it rewinds. Let's see if I can get this right. It'll actually kind of roll back like it's kind of, there we go, a little bit less severe. We'll have this kind of go here and go, let it roll back and then roll forward. So it does a little bit of a rewind, kind of like a building speed rewind before it rolls forward. So it's rolling into the negatives and then rolls forward. If you see that, it's kind of weird with the wheel. And then it rolls forward. So again, things you can control. Kind of watch this point right here. You'll see this point will rewind backwards. Maybe just a little bit. We'll just have to rewind just a little bit. Just a little bit of a, there we go. That's nice. Yeah, so again, tricks we can do, things we can do. But if you want something, even if you want something, for example, we can have this, let's say we have this, let's go to workflow here, and we'll say, we'll grab in this, USA map, for example. We'll grab this USA map, or maybe William Shatner. We'll do it with William Shatner. Yeah, here we go. Good old William Shatner. And we want William Shatner to pop up from the ground. So we're gonna hit Y, grab the pan behind tool, put it at the bottom of where he is, right there. At the bottom, we'll turn this off for a second. And so now the pan behind tool is right at the bottom of them. And now we wanna say, we're gonna have scale up. We're gonna have William Shatner at 1 second here be full size. So he's right here at 1 second gonna be full size. And then here at beginning, he's gonna be at 0. So right now he's gonna expand up and get bigger. But we want to do this kind of overshooting where he kind of expands up, kind of like balloons up and then falls back into place. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the speed, we're going to go to the value graph, grab this, Command Option click and grab Bezier Handles and have him bounce up a little bit bigger than he is. So now he's going to open up and go bigger and then fall back into place. So it's kind of bouncing like this. Boom, boom. Kind of this kind of inflating kind of thing, you know. Again, we can make this more drastic, really big, whoosh, boom. But if you want that kind of animation, you know, that kind of growing out, we can do that inside there. So, you know, when you first get started, you're going to start with some basic animation. You're going to do some basic kind of movement of things moving around the screen. You're going to have banners on screen. You're going to say, oh, hey, this is, you know, this movement here, position off screen. Hey, it's gonna look like this. And you're gonna say, hey, that's good enough. And then you go a little step further and you keep working, you keep doing stuff. And then you're gonna say, hey, hit F9 or hit animation, keyframe assistant, easy ease. And you're gonna add some easy ease. And you're gonna say, hey, that looks better. But then someone's gonna say, hey, I want this banner, you know, to look like it fell down or it, you know, like a cinder block falling off the back of a truck or some kind of thing. You gotta start playing with those things. If you ever watch, animation of people moving, if you ever watch cartoons of like people moving around, if it's not motion captured, if it's just hand drawn or whatever, it's really a skill to get it to really look like a real person moving. Like it's really a skill to get somebody moving. If you ever see like, you know, animated characters in movies or whatever, and it's really a person walking, like it's one thing to get something simple moving. It's more complicated to get like, you know, I use the example in Forrest Gump of like a feather in the end of Forrest Gump, the feather flying off the book. That it takes a little bit more, you know, creative work inside of here, play inside of here. My experience has been that when you first get inside of here, the stuff you make is a mess. You start to make stuff and it just doesn't work out for you, and it's really tricky, and it's really, you got to wrap your brain around it. Some people latch onto it really quickly. I had a really hard time with it. It was really hard to understand, and I kept making a mess and then undoing and undoing and undoing. And I work with it, but you keep working and you start to get a sense of how things move, and you get a sense of how, you know, the physics work. But also watch things outside, you know, watch how leaves fall off a tree, or how, you know, a dog jumps across a yard, or whatever it may be. You know, start to look at things and say, oh, how is that motion really happening? And, You know, where's the exaggeration? Where's the acceleration? Where's how it comes to a stop? You know, things you can do, just things you can try. Anyway, this is temporal interpolation. So the first part of this, we talked about spatial interpolation. This part, we're talking about temporal interpolation. We're going to get to something different as we go on, and a bunch of different things. We're going to start talking about effects and masks and all kinds of good stuff. But for now, just work on building out your motions, and more importantly, work on your Bezier handles. Work on your Bezier handles. We're going to use them all throughout this course and all throughout all the courses we do here.